up to 80% of bourbon's flavor doesn't come from the grains or the water. It comes from the barrel. That oak cask doesn't just store bourbon, it makes it. The smoky vanilla, the deep caramel, the warm spice, that's the wood talking. So how does a tree become the soul of America's most iconic whiskey? Let's step into the fiery, hands-on world of barrel making, where oak, heat, and time turn raw spirit into liquid gold. Before the flames, before the bourbon, it all begins in the forest with a tree that's been growing for decades, sometimes even a century. That tree is American white oak. But to bourbon makers, it's simply the gold standard. This oak grows mostly in Missouri, Kentucky, and Tennessee, and it's prized for one big reason. Its wood is tight-grained, strong, and packed with natural flavor compounds. That tight grain is what makes it perfect for holding liquid without leaking, but more importantly, it lets the bourbon slowly soak in and pull out rich flavors like vanilla, spice, and toasted sugar. Contrary to popular belief, these trees aren't just chopped down at random. The best cooperages, like Independent Stave Company, follow strict harvesting rules. Some of the oaks they use are over 100 years old. They're carefully selected, and for every tree cut, new ones are planted to keep the forest alive and thriving. It's a craft that's rooted in nature, patience, and a whole lot of care. Once the oak is harvested, the next stop on its journey is to a stave mill, where raw logs begin their transformation into something much more precise. Massive trunks are cut down into long, narrow planks called staves. These are the building blocks of every barrel. The process is a mix of muscle and machinery, but there's still a human touch in every step. Workers carefully inspect and stack the staves, towering piles that look a lot like giant games of Jenga, ready to take on the next phase, seasoning. Here's the thing though, seasoning ain't done in some kind of a fancy lab. It happens outdoors under open skies. For 3 to 6 months and sometimes as long as 2 full years, the wood is left to breathe. By the end of this phase, the staves are no longer just pieces of wood. They're full of character and ready to become something greater. So next, it's time to shape them into a barrel. With the staves seasoned and full of potential, it's time for the real hands-on work to begin. This is where coopering comes in, the age-old craft of building barrels. And believe it or not, the whole process hasn't changed much in centuries. Each barrel starts with about 28 to 32 staves, carefully arranged side by side, kind of like a puzzle. There's no glue, no nails, just skill, heat, and a whole lot of tradition. This step right here is called raising the barrel. One by one, the staves are bent into shape using steam and fire. See, the heat softens the wood just enough to curve it into that perfect, familiar barrel shape. It takes a practiced hand to get it just right. Once the shape is formed, metal hoops are hammered in to lock everything into place. The result? A fully formed barrel that's watertight, airtight, and ready to face the flame. Now, what's truly amazing here is that so much of this is still done by hand, by skilled coopers who know exactly how much pressure, heat, and patience each barrel needs. This isn't just woodworking, it's craftsmanship passed down through the generations. With our barrel now fully shaped, it's time to add something you might not expect. Fire. Not to destroy, but to unlock the flavor that's been hiding inside the wood all along. It all starts with toasting. The inside of the barrel is gently heated, slow and steady. Now this process pulls the natural sugars in the oak toward the surface. Now it's here that the magic begins. The heat releases flavor compounds like vanilla, lactones that give a coconut-like sweetness, and the early notes of caramel. Oh, but then comes the real heat. The barrel is set on fire, just for a short blast. This is called charring, and it gives the inside of the barrel its signature alligator skin look, blackened, blistered, and full of character. But here's the thing, this step isn't just for show. The char creates a thin layer of charcoal that acts as a natural filter, smoothing out harsh notes in the whiskey. And here's something most people don't know. By U.S. law, bourbon must be aged in a brand new charred oak container. No used barrels, no shortcuts. Every drop of bourbon you've ever tasted has touched fresh charred oak. From vanilla to spice, from golden color to smooth finish, it all begins with this fire. Once the barrel's toasted, charred, and ready, it's time for the real magic to begin. That magic starts with a clear, raw spirit known as white lightning. It looks nothing like the smooth amber bourbon we all know and love. But once it's poured into the barrel, the transformation begins. Over the next several years, the barrel becomes a kind of time machine. As the seasons change, the liquid expands and contracts with the heat and the cold. In the summer, the whiskey pushes deep into the charred oak. In the winter, it pulls back out, carrying flavor, color, and complexity with it. This cycle happens repeatedly, year after year, slowly turning that sharp white spirit into rich, smooth bourbon. And the scale of this is massive. In Kentucky alone, there are over 14 million barrels aging right now, more than 3 barrels for every person in the state. Now, every single one of them is doing the slow dance with time, fire, and wood. And the longer that bourbon sits, the deeper the flavor gets. Even after the bourbon's gone, the barrel isn't done. Each freshly emptied cask holds about 2 gallons of soaked-in bourbon, and that leftover flavor makes them a hot commodity around the world. From Scotch whiskey in Scotland to rum in the Caribbean, tequila in Mexico, and even craft beer, used barrels are giving spirits a second life, sometimes for decades. Last year alone, Kentucky shipped out over $300 million worth of used barrels, with companies like Midwest Barrels sending huge orders to places like India, China, and Scotland. But sometimes, those barrels circle back, re-imported for something new. Some distilleries are experimenting with finishing techniques, aging bourbon in casks that once held other spirits. One wild example, a Kentucky bourbon aged in Indian whiskey barrels. Then there's Dan Calloway's Project Cathedral, a special bourbon aged in barrels made from oak sourced from the same forest that helped rebuild Notre Dame's cathedral. Same wood, new story, different spirit. For over 2,000 years, the wooden barrel has stood the test of time. And when it comes to bourbon, it's more than just a container. It's the heart of the flavor. Every sip holds a piece of the forest, a spark of fire, and years of quiet aging. It's tradition, and it's craftsmanship, and it's all sealed in oak. If y'all enjoyed the journey from tree to barrel to bourbon, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe for more, and raise a glass to the barrel that makes it all possible.